In this story, we will hear about a boy's encounter with something malevolent and dreadful. But first, a question. What type of stories do you prefer? True or fictional? Comment in the comment section below. Now, let's begin the story. When I was just a child, I was forced to witness a horrifying event that would cast an ominous shadow over my life. That fateful night, when terror struck, I awoke abruptly to the sound of piercing screams and the eerie shattering of glass. My bedside lamp revealed that the clock had barely passed midnight. A wave of fear washed over me as I threw off my warm blankets and crawled out of bed, sneaking into the dark corridor. The memory of how the corridor seemed to stretch into infinity that night, and how the icy floorboards seemed to grip my bare feet like a vise still haunts me. I was dressed in nothing but my flimsy nightgown, and the darkness around me seemed to come alive, breathing its own malevolence into my soul. Despite the overwhelming urge to flee and hide under the covers, curiosity overcame my fear. I had to know what was about to unfold. The house was as silent as the grave as I tiptoed down the corridor. The only sound breaking the silence was the ghastly, almost otherworldly noise emanating from the living room. I mustered the courage to take the final step, cautiously peering around the corner. What met my eyes would haunt my nightmares for the rest of my life. An enigmatic figure suspended my father against the wall. His feet dangled just inches above the floor, and I noticed he was still wearing his worn work boots. I recalled that he had come home late that evening, and I wondered if my mother would be furious. My gaze was drawn upward to my father's throat, where the figure's face was hidden, and from there came a sound akin to a horrifying symphony of screams and slurping, as if something unspeakable was drinking from him with an otherworldly thirst. The figure seemed to sense my presence and turned to face me, lowering my father's lifeless body to the floor. The entity standing before me was a living nightmare. Her hair was as black as night, cascading like a waterfall of shadows over her shoulders. Her eyes glowed with an icy yellow light, and her face and chin were smeared with blood, as though she had feasted on the essence of a lost soul. She slowly raised a crooked finger to her crimson lips, commanding me into a silence that chilled me to the bone. She moved through the room with a grace that defied the laws of the living, like a shadow given form. For the first time, I noticed my mother's bloodied and torn body lying on the floor. I stood there, paralyzed by fear, as the entity gathered my mother and leaped out of the window, disappearing into the frigid, moonlit night as if she had never existed. The police would later find a trail of blood leading into the woods behind our home, but there were no human footprints in the pristine snow. My mother's body remained missing, as if she had been swallowed by the very darkness that had consumed our lives. With over 2 acres of land separating us from the nearest neighbor, I was the sole witness to this horrific event, and understandably, no one believed my terrifying tale. Who could blame them, given the unimaginable horror of my words? I was sent to live with my grandmother in a nearby suburb, where I tried to lead as normal a life as possible. But beneath the facade of normality, a burning determination smoldered within me. I planned and waited, knowing that one day I would come face to face with the monster that had torn my family apart.